another episode of our AutoCAD design series. Previously, we talked about how we can create our layers for each of our components we'll be working on in our design, in which we also created some layers for our design work, and then we proceeded in designing some of our doors and windows we'll be needing for our plan and elevation. So now we'll be moving on to making a design properly. We'll be designing a simple two-bedroom flat. I made a sketch of what we'll be designing, so we'll be going with this. We're making a two-bedroom, a living room, kitchen, dining, and terraces with also the visitor's toilet. Now, as you can see, we are having some dimensions in millimeters here. We're having some dimensions. Basically, in designing or maybe in construction, there are basically some standard measurements according to the code of practices we have to follow, though there might be some changes in the measurement due to different circumstances. We have to consider some things if there is going to be need for us to change the measurement. But for the sake of this lesson, we'll be making use of some of the standard measurements. For example, like the bedroom, the standard measurement for that is always 12 feet by 12 feet, which is 3,600 millimeters by 3,600 millimeters. We are having a toilet and bathroom which has a minimum dimension of 1,200 millimeters, and then so on like that. So by the time we start our drawing, then we get to know more of the measurements and then the rest. Meanwhile, this is just a sketch. By the time we follow the dimension in details using AutoCAD to draw our design, some things might change, though it does not affect our drawing, but some things might change. In fact, when it's time for maybe you make a drawing for a client with with the dimensions, and then it's time for the construction to be carried out in real life, there might actually be some changes also, though it does not affect the main design and everything. So there might actually, so don't let it surprise you if there are some little differences in this sketch, between the sketch and what we're actually designing. Though it will look the same, it will not disfigure the design and or any other thing, but there might just be some slight differences. So now let's proceed in designing our two-bedroom. And before that, before we move on, while I was explaining the uses of each of these tools and everything, we did not explain about the status bar we are having here. We have some tools we'll be needing also to make our work easier. For example, the grid, maybe let's assume these grid lines we are having on our sheet. If you want to clean them out, if you want to remove them, you can just switch them on and off here. You can just switch them off, though I'll be leaving it. And then we are having this dynamic input. What this is used for is, let's say for example, I want to give a command using my keyboard. I want to give a shortcut command now. Let's assume I want to increase my limit. Let me say limit. This, as I'm typing it, is giving me the text here, what I'm typing, limit, and it's giving me some options. That's the work of this. If I switch it off, it will leave, it will go. So I've switched it off now. Let me type limit. It will not show. Instead, it will be showing here on the command bar here, since I've switched it off. But in case I switch it on, let's switch it on. Then as I'm typing it, it will not type on the command bar here. It will be giving me here beside the cursor here. So that's just the use of that, the dynamic input. Then we are having the auto and then the polar. What the auto simply does is, if you are should on it, it's indicating I want to draw a straight line, either vertically or horizontally. Something of this nature, just a vertical line or an horizontal line. We cannot draw an angular line with it. It's either we make a vertical line or an horizontal line. But if you should switch it off and come here to the work alternatively, if I should switch on this will go off. If I switch on the polar, auto will go off. Now that I've selected my polar now, let me switch it on. It's indicating that maybe I can draw an angular line. I can draw line at various angles, not necessarily vertical or horizontal. I can do that also, and I can also bring my cursor to any degree here like this. And as I'm drawing a straight line, it's showing me some continuous green dotted line like that, indicating my line is straight. If I'm not having that, definitely I'm drawing a line with an inclined line with an angle. So that's just the use of that. And if I should come to the drop down arrow beside it, I can select from various angles. Maybe I want to draw angle 45. I've selected it. Now this my angle 45 is showing me now as a straight line. This is my angle 45. This is a straight line. This is an angle 45 here, something like that. So that's just the use of that. And then when we come to OSNAP here, if you should look at the drop down button, we are having our endpoint, midpoint. If I should switch them, if I should, is they are all ticked now, right? They are marked. If I should untick them or mark them, definitely it will not be showing me this green box as my end point anymore. It will not be showing me this triangle as my midpoint anymore. Let's assume I switched it off. Now I won't be having that anymore. Can you see that? I won't be having that anymore. I won't be having that. But in case I switch it on, then it will be showing us accurately where our endpoint is and where our midpoint is. I can also select the drop down button and select any point I want it to indicate for me. That's just the use of that. And beside it here, we are having our line weight. Line weight simply, if I switch it on, earlier when we created our wall here, when we created our wall, we gave it a thickness, right? We gave our wall a thickness. Let me expand this. Can you see it here? We give our wall a thickness of 0.30 mm, right? Now, once we make our drawing, our wall drawing now, once we start drawing that, the thickness will not show if it is switched off until we switch it on before our thickness can be shown on the drawing, until the thickness of the line can show. Now, this selection cycling, let's assume maybe especially we use it especially when we are doing our 3D drawing. Let's assume maybe when we are drawing multiple intersecting lines or boundaries together, and you want to select a specific object out of all the intersecting objects, then you can just switch it on. Once you switch it on and you select, let's assume I switch it on now and I want to select this line, it will ask me, is it the first line? You see that it's highlighted the first diagonal line. It's asking me, is it that one I want to select or the next one? It's highlighting the other one now. So that's just the work of selection cycling, to make you accurately select an object out of the rest. It differentiates the object out of the rest. And I think the rest will be needing that when maybe we are dealing with our 3D or so. And then this is indicating maybe we want to change from our 2D to our 3D design. Maybe we are done with 2D, now want to move on to our three-dimensional design, then we'll come here. And if you notice that maybe any of what we need is not displayed here, then we can come here and select them. All these tools that are ticked now, they are marked as showing here, are definitely showing here. So if you think that okay, you don't need one is useless for you, then you can just switch it off here. So without wasting much time, let's dive in properly and start our design. So based on the sketch we are having here, we are having two bedrooms. So now there are majorly two ways of setting out or maybe designing our plan. We are having the path to whole and the whole to path. The difference between the two is simply is that if it's as for the path to whole, we are starting with maybe a path first, maybe a bedroom, then we'll move on to the toilet, then the next bedroom and the toilet. Then we'll pick them bit by bit, part by part, till we complete the whole design. And the other one, which is the whole to part, is indicating that we'll be calculating our total length and total width of our design as a whole, get the walls out, and then start sectioning them into parts, start dividing them into parts. That's the meaning of the whole to part. But for the sake of this design, we'll be using the path to hole, simply because the measurement I'm giving here, we are giving here, are basically for the internal measurement, the internal dimensions of each of our components here. So this 3600 is basically the internal dimension from here to here of our bedroom, for the length of our bedroom, and here also. Likewise for the rest of the components of the part also. So we'll be using path to hole. We'll start by first creating our bedroom, then the toilet, and then we'll move on to the rest.